Charlie Smyth, thank you very much for taking the time out to join us. I have to say I was fortunate to see you walk around in New Orleans around the time when the Super Bowl was on a few weeks ago. You seemed very comfortable, man, in your new surrounds of your new home city. It must have been just a moment for you to take a step back and realise that it has just been a crazy year to 18 months for you.
It's been absolutely crazy. Like, just going back from, obviously, like, it was a pipe dream for me really to be, getting a chance to play in the NFL. And, obviously this past year I've had the opportunity to try out, through different, kicking events. And obviously, back home in Ireland with Tag. And, obviously we had the combine in Loughborough, the NFL combine, and then a pro day. Getting signed by Saints Day, and it was just a surreal year. And look, as you said, getting to spend a year basically now in a different country, or sorry, in a different city, like New Orleans, and the unique culture that it has. It's just been great, and been very grateful for this past year, and even just getting to go to the Super Bowl and be a part of that sort of scene as well. It was pretty cool experience, to be honest now. And looking forward to year two now.
We'll get into your own journey, I guess, into the fantastic position you're in now in a second. I just want to dig into that cultural part that you mentioned there, because I think it's lost on a lot of us, because American culture is something we see so much on TV, that to make the change from living in Mayo Bridge in County Down, I believe you were sort of focusing on becoming a teacher, to living in this big American city. You're in a very different locker room with the American players than it is playing Gaelic games in Ireland. Has it taken you long to make that kind of cultural transition, or is it still something that you're battling with?
Yeah, to be honest, it's probably still something that you're getting used to. More so the fact that, like, you're living away from your friends and family, and obviously whenever it's your first year in a different country, it takes a while to build those connections, maybe off the field as well. In terms of, like, going for coffees with people and other things like that. But don't get me wrong, like, it's still really enjoyable. It's you learn a lot about yourself, just dealing with, living on your own in an apartment, and, how to, like, obviously I had a lot of home comforts with my mum and stuff at home, and you don't have that as much as of that anymore. But look, no, it's just something that you just get on with. And obviously the main goal is to be a starting kicker, and I know, whenever that hopefully happens, that, all that stuff will just be, just a minor distraction or a minor side piece to what the main goal is, which is to be playing on Sundays. And whenever that happens, I'll be the happiest man alive.
You're speaking to us now from a training camp in Florida. It's just interesting, of course, because the NFL, more than most sports, has a ridiculously long off season, so it takes a lot to make sure that people keep up with the standards that you obviously would have been working on with the guys throughout the season, from September all the way through the autumn. Do you get back to Ireland much, or do you spend more time than you may have anticipated in America training for when the season comes back into gear, really?
No, I'm just back in the States. I was home from January 9th, I believe, to really in around just the week of the Super Bowl. And then after the Super Bowl, I was home for another 4 weeks. So I got basically just short of 2 months at home, and it was great. Just getting to see my family and friends, getting to hang out with them, getting to just see my mates and just do things that you normally would have done before, obviously, the whole, the kicking thing started. So it was brilliant. And now I feel refreshed and I'm ready to go again now for year two. And it's great to be back out here in Florida, training with the Irish guys as well, and training with Tag again, and training with this year's crop of international kickers who did really well at the combine this year. And just being surrounded by that, and it's like a high performing environment, and it's just helping me get locked back in for my own kicking now in year two. And the new guys come through, they're all really, really good. So it's just a great environment to be in. I'm actually going to San Diego on Sunday now to train with another kicking coach. So it's not a bad place to spend your off season now, Florida and San Diego now.
Coast to coast, my word! Like we thought it was it was exotic when we hear that the likes of Donegal team going out to Portugal for a training camp, but you're heading from Florida to San Diego. The weather must be pretty good. So let's bring us back to the start of your own journey into this, because one thing that's really interesting from the documentary which came out on Monday on RTE, Punt, the Irish in the NFL, is the fact that the other guys you went over with at the time, we talked about Rory Beggan and Mark Jackson being other GAA goalkeepers, and Darrell Leader as well, who was at the combine with you last year in Indianapolis. But unlike those guys, you came into this with a genuine interest. You already had an interest in American football, the NFL. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I was a big fan of the sport probably from in around 2016 or so. So that's going back now nearly 9 years. So yeah, it was one of those sports. So the first game I watched, there was three kicks in the last 2 minutes of a playoff game. 50-plus yard field goals, and I was like, oh, this is really exciting. The fact that something that I feel like I could do is deciding games, and that's what's really unique about American football compared to Gaelic football is that, don't get me wrong, you can still have a lot of big, free kicks in Gaelic football, but your moments are so few and far between that like everything you do on the field on game day matters so much, and that's the exciting part about it is that you get so little opportunities, but you have to make the most of them. And then the NFL is kind of a ruthless business, and if you're not making the most of them, if you're not making your kicks, you're out of a job and you're back home. So it's kind of the exciting part about this, what I'm doing. And yeah, look, yeah, I've been a huge fan for so long now, and it's a pretty cool experience just to be, getting a chance to try out for the league that you never thought, you would be possible. And it's kind of like nearly being like a, Liverpool fan and, getting a call from Liverpool or something like that, because I was a Green Bay fan, and, there was a bit of interest from them as well at the time. And it was just crazy that, these things were materializing the way they did.
And what was the moment that it clocked in your head that going to be an American football kicker is something you could even attempt to do? Because again, for most of us in Ireland, it's if we do have an interest in American football like you do, it's a TV program, or we listen to how Americans have come through the system. They play in high school, they play in college for 3 or 4 years, they might get into the NFL afterwards. What was the moment that you realized that this is something that you could actually pursue?
As in making the NFL, or just being like, as in, I think I could do it?
First time you kicked in American football, I guess.
Yeah, well, I suppose, like, it was always in the back of my mind that in Gaelic football I had a pretty strong kick. And like, one of the tactics that we always would have done with my club was, I would have hoofed the ball up the field as far as I could, and we would have scored a lot of goals from that, from flick-ons, and it was kind of the tactic that we had. So I knew I had the power, and my type of free kick in Gaelic football, I didn't really use a big run up. I only used, maybe I walked up the ball like halfway, and I maybe used maybe three or four steps to explode into the kick. So I knew that was kind of the style of American football kicking, because obviously you only get, a jab, a drive step, and then you're kicking the ball basically. So you only get three steps to kick it. So I kind of thought I had the raw power and materials to translate into American football. And yeah, basically I just wanted to try it out for fun. I was actually working at a cool camps at the time, and I saw Ireland's Kicking King was on, and was Stam saying a good club mate of mine, a good clubmate of mine, Benny Coulter. I'm sure you would probably know him. And I was actually standing beside him, and I booked the leader kicking Ireland's Kicking King beside him, and then I just ended up going for it just for fun. It was actually before the championship. That started with my club, and I just went for it, for a bit of a laugh or whatever. But at the same time, I was quite curious. Was there anything that could actually come of this? And I knew I'd played college or I'd done college at home, so I didn't think that was going to be a possibility. So I didn't think anything was going to come off it. But then obviously you got the email 3 weeks later saying that the NFL had opened up its doors internationally to kickers and punters. And from that point on, something kind of just sparked within inside me. I was like, this is something that I'm really going to pursue. And after that, really, I think it was like a week or so after, I phoned up my down manager and says, "Look, I'm going to give this American football a go." And everybody probably thought I was, sure, yeah, good luck, you'll not make it or whatever. But I was pretty determined, and I was quietly confident about it.
Yeah, was there much of that, like when you tell people, "Oh, I'm heading off to America to try go for the NFL"? Was there many people looking at you being like, "What's this fella doing? What's he at?"
I'm sure there probably was. I think the first time I told my parents that there was a possibility, after just going for a wee session down in Dublin, kicking six footballs, arriving late or wherever it was, and then for 3 weeks later to say that, the NFL is actually a chance, there's a possibility here. Yeah, I just remember telling my parents, and they were like, "What are you doing?" Like, it's like, but they kind of knew I was big into the NFL, because they couldn't get control of the TV remote on Sunday night. So, but yeah, look, from just I only told a very few people about it, and then there was kind of tag put out a TikTok about it of us like doing our kicking or whatever, and then people were like, "Wait, is he actually like serious about this?" And they saw the caliber of player who I was kicking with, and then that's from that point on. Then I was kind of like, okay, this is actually legit. I think Charlie actually might have a chance here because he's got a decent kick on him.
Yeah, what's interesting is you make that leap to go over to Florida to train, to kick in front of a bunch of scouts in the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, which, for listeners who don't know, it's basically this sort of congress of scouts who go and scout out all these different players who mainly come from the colleges. But for yourself, you had to go to Florida and basically learn American football effectively from scratch. One of the coaches that was on the documentary said it was like drinking water from a fire hose. You have to learn a brand new sport in the space of what was it, like 10 weeks or something like that? Not even by the time you get to the combine, because I know you had a few weeks afterwards before the pro days when scouts come to see you guys train in Florida. That must have been an incredibly intense experience, because I know you're not alone. There's other guys there who are learning it at the same time as you are, but still to come from playing Gaelic football as a goalkeeper and down to this incredibly intense experience in an elite environment, that must be an incredible amount of pressure to put on yourself, and in a very short space of time as well.
Yeah, there probably was a lot of vulnerability and involved with it too. It was a big risk to because sometimes we like to stay within our lanes at home, and I was like, no, like screw this. Like I'm going for this. Obviously a lot of other guys that were playing Gaelic football too, they went through that as well. So we kind of felt like we were in it together in that way, and I formed really good friendships. So all the guys from home that were doing it, Mark and Rory and Dara as well, formed really good friendships with those guys, but don't get me wrong, yeah, it was intense. But we had the luxury at home of obviously tags from Ireland as well. So I really the training really started from last October. Whenever I was told there was a chance that the NFL was a possibility, then the train just kind of started, and then there was a while before I was told that my spot was confirmed with the international program, and then but you're still training away, you're still giving it your all. But ultimately, you knew that the combine was the main goal, getting to kick at it. And whenever we got out to Florida, the training was good, but in around maybe 4 or 5 days before then, things just started to really heighten up, and obviously there was a lot of media hype from home as well, which we dealt with and stuff, which was great because everybody was so interested and the support was unreal. But yeah, just managing that, it was quite intense. But at the end of the day, it's kicking a ball. It's something that we've done all our lives, and sometimes we can overcomplicate it. At the end of the day, if you find a sweet spot, if you know how to find a sweet spot on the American football, then just go and kick it and try not to overcomplicate it without. But there is details to it too. So it's kind of like finding the balance between both, if you get me. And
yeah, it was
really, really enjoyable. It was the best memories of my life, to be honest.
Yeah, there's a beauty in the simplicity of it sometimes, but I guess there's simplicity, but also everything has to go right. There's so much pressure. And when you're performing in the combine as well, not only was it a daunting experience, but afterwards, you have to go through all of these interviews with 32 different NFL teams that want to try and get a beat on you, I guess. What was that process like? Does it ever feel repetitive? Was that something you were prepared for?
Yes. I mean, about 80% of the conversation was just explaining what Gaelic football is. So I think the guys this year, I'd say they were all right now in dealing with that side of things. But look, no, it was great. It was really enjoyable. It was actually, we did the interviews before kicking. So the kicking was maybe at like 5 around 5 p.m. I think it was. And the interviews were like from 9 to 11. So I actually really enjoyed the fact that it was on the same day, and it was something to keep your mind off of the kicking, because obviously you had to wait all day for it. So the day just flew by, and those interviews were really enjoyable. The coaches were, sometimes we think that, these coaches with the NFL are all monsters. At the end of the day, they're just people too, and they want to have a laugh with you and stuff. And if you go in with that kind of relaxed, confident approach to them, then I think that's how you kind of win them over. I think anyways, and that's what our tactic was going into those interviews, was just to come across as quite relaxed, but confident and assured in yourself at the same time. And those interviews were unreal. It was funny just explaining all what Gaelic football was, and like how there's only 2 sports in the world that kick the ball directly off the ground. Gaelic football and American football, and it was a wee bit repetitive, but it was really enjoyable at the same time.
Is at least you weren't trying to explain to them the new rules, the
Oh yeah,
11 versus
forget
12
about
or
it. The new rules. The new rules, and all of us being goalkeepers as well, and all the controversy over that. There would have been some crack. Like I can't touch the ball, but I have to go across halfway. But you're supposed to be a goalkeeper in your goals. It's like I don't know. It's messed up. It's
uh,
funny the way all these new rules are playing out now.
Yeah, I don't envy the guys who are there now, and I believe I'm right in saying that you're in Florida training with the two Irish guys who are in the same position you were in around this time last year in the international player pathway. You had Ross Bulger, who was a punter in Idaho State, a college football team, is now going to be a kicker through the NFL IPP, and Mark McNamee, who, similar to yourself, was a Gaelic football goalkeeper. He was playing in Ballyboden, St Enda's, I think, as a goalkeeper there. And similar to yourself, as making the translation over there. Do they see you as a resource now to be lent on? Because obviously, as much as you are much further up the path and you were very much the trailblazer here, you're only a year in advance. But how much do they really lean on you and talk to you about things like how to talk to people in the combine, or how to talk to people when the pro day happens in a couple of weeks' time?
Yeah, I remember back in, I think it was November or December. Probably was December, and I did a Zoom call with the guys, and it was just really, that was quite, it was just question and answer sort of deal, and I was just talking away to the fellas and trying to be a resource to them. Now out in Florida, for me, it's great because both guys are of similar age to me, and at the end of the day, they're both guys are actually older than me, and I've actually formed really good friendships with them. At the end of the day, like I can be a resource, but ultimately I'm trying to make connections through this American football deal as well, and it's just I've formed really good friendships with both of the guys now, and I hope that both of them make it because they're two really really talented guys. So it's kind of managing, like being a resource with those guys, but ultimately I'm out here to enjoy my time with them as well and spend some time with guys who are trying to pursue this NFL dream as well, and you can learn a thing or two from Ross as well because he's played American football now for 2 seasons. So just asking him how he deals with whenever he's not punting in game, like what are you doing, how are you staying warm. So I'm learning from him as well, and just interesting seeing Mark's approach and how he's very detailed orientated. He likes to get his mind away from things as well. He's got his own things that he does in the evening time. So just learning from those guys has been brilliant. But ultimately, trying to be a resource for them because I did what they did last year. So it's a good balance, and it's a good approach. And don't get me wrong, the crack's mighty as well. 4 or 5 Irish guys out in Florida just not knowing what they're doing, but in the sunshine and trying to avoid some sunburn, it's good to have a crack like.
Yeah, and shout out as well to Aaron Sexton, who is a former Ulster rugby player. He's trying to be a skills position player over there. Incredibly difficult thing to do. I know it's very different to what you have done as well, but it definitely seems like a good bunch of you out there. Our YouTube viewers will see the fact that you're wearing your fleur de lis on your chest. It's the New Orleans Saints crest, making sure you're representing the brand. I think one of the most interesting points of the NFL preseason for me, as somebody who covers it, was your first kick in an NFL uniform. Basically the dying moments of a preseason game at the Arizona Cardinals. I don't want us to spoil the ending for any of us who don't fully know what happened, but talk us through that moment, because it was a kick to win the game. You've never kicked whilst wearing the full uniform in a full stadium, with the lights and the cameras and everything else. You go up there, and in fairness to you, you get the job done. Saints win the game. What was that moment like? It must have been something just mad. I can't even wrap my head around it.
Yeah, I just remember thinking, like, I think we scored a touchdown at the first drive of the second half, and then I was told after that extra point kick that I was up next. So it was kind of like the whole of the third quarter and the whole of the fourth quarter, and I was just sitting waiting. And obviously then, they went down the field and scored. So I was pretty down on it. I was like, oh, like I'm not going to get a kick here or whatever, But then once they scored, I was like, okay, this means that we're down by one and we have 2 minutes to go and win the game here. So obviously, we needed the field goal and we had limited time. So the most likely thing was that to set us up in field goal range if we were going to be successful in the game. So I just remember I had ultimate confidence in Spencer Rattler, our quarterback who was in at that stage, and he's got a bit of a swagger about him, and in those situations, nothing phases him. So I knew that we were going to be in good position to set us up in field goal range. So I kind of knew that the game was going to come down to a kick, and I just remember thinking this is class. Like, this is set up for a game winner for a first ever kick. Like what an unbelievable opportunity. Don't get me wrong, like you were nervous as well, but I just kept repeating to myself, just trust my process, trust my preparation. I had a couple of controllable thoughts that I was just two words I just kept saying to myself, throughout those 2 minute drills, and maybe kick two or three footballs into the net. And I just remember then, okay, the ball was spotted inside the 20-yard line, and it was a 37-yarder, and I went on to the field and they called timeout, and I was like, right, okay, this to try to use like that timeout to like make you feel more nervous or whatever. But I just thought this is brilliant. I've got another minute out in the field to get my bearings right, and just eye up the goalpost, eye up the target, and just be on my own. People were coming out to you on the sideline. I was out in the middle of the field on my own, and then you just sap up, do your routine, and kick the ball. And yeah, I was pretty excited once I went through now. So yeah, it was a class feeling now, and yeah, look, hoping for many more of those now in the future.
Absolutely. And another interesting aspect to your journey in New Orleans is the fact that you're a kicker. There's only ever one kicker at a time on an NFL roster, unlike in many other positions. Blake Grupe was selected to be the starter. He ended up playing the season. You've spent this season working on the practice squad, which is essentially a reserve squad, a backup squad. What is your routine like there? Do you mix in with the rest of the guys much? Are you separated? Because obviously, I imagine there's a level of self-focus that you're putting in just to make sure that you're as good as you possibly can be. But is there ever any tension with Blake? What way do you guys interact throughout the course of the season as you're practicing week in, week out?
Look, no, like the decision's made. It is what it is. Like I'd only been kicking a football less than a year, and to win the starting job after kicking football less than a year would have been quite something. And look, I was very close to it. I thought I was very close to it, but look, that's not the way it went this time round. And then you're told they want you back in the practice squad. So it was, yeah. Look, we ended up signing, and it was a great year just in terms of the consistency levels you develop in those, and percentages. Every session just kept going up and up and up, and there was days where you weren't missing. There was days where it was, most days were over 90% the second half of the season. I think every day was. And yeah, look, you just develop a relationship then with my snapper and holder, and you just keep working hard and keep your head down. You don't really say too much. You just show up every day with a good attitude and treat people well around the facility and show that you care. And ultimately, you're just preparing like as if if something was to happen, that you'd be ready to get your chance. And look, like don't get me wrong, like it's you want to play, like, but whenever the decision's made, like there's no point taking things personally into your personal relationship. And myself and Blake got on really well throughout the year. He's a really good dude, and a very good kicker as well. His stats will tell you that from this year. But at the same time, I feel like I'm ready to be playing in this league as well. So it's just hoping that an opportunity comes up where you find yourself in a situation where you're getting a string of games together, and then you just make the most of that, and then good things can happen as a result of that if you take your opportunity. So I'm very excited about the future now going into year two, and let's see what happens. It's going to be quite an exciting process, and any day you're in the NFL is a good day.
Very much. Do you feel like you're a better player now after spending a year in training?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, look, don't get me wrong. Like I felt like after the year we had, the improvement levels went up a lot. But then just spend that year in the practice squad and working with my snapper and holder every day, and maybe twice a week. It was brilliant. And as I said, like the whenever you're hitting maybe 15 footballs, 16 footballs a session, and you're scoring 15 or 14, 15 or 16 of those, those sessions are mounting up, and the coaches see that, and then that's ultimately why they want to bring you back. So definitely I'm 100% a better player than I was this time last year, and I've got a year's experience of seeing how game days are run, how to manage yourself on the sidelines, and even just make friendships with your teammates as well. Because I remember you asked that in the last question and I didn't really touch on it. Like you're very much a part of the group. Like you're the only difference is you don't strip out on Sundays. But with the Saints, we travelled to all the away games this year. So like I got to go to Green Bay, and I was a fan of them. I got to go to Dallas, Kansas City. All these amazing stadiums, Atlanta, Los Angeles. I can name them all, to be honest. And it was just great experiences getting to be a part of a team on a sideline. And like ultimately I want to be in uniform now in the near future, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's an interesting aspect because it was something that was talked about in the documentary, that the culture change and the sense of loneliness because you're a bit of an outsider and you're working in a very individualized position as a kicker. It seems like that isn't that doesn't seem to be a massive obstacle. You seem to be getting on well with the guys.
Yeah, look, like whenever the guys hear a funny accent coming into the locker room, they're like, "Well, what's this here? Who's this here guy?" He says he's from Ireland, but he's got a really weird accent from Ireland. He doesn't have the like the typical Southern accent or whatever, and it's just funny, like, coming into that locker room and, you're in a group setting and guys, they might ask you a question in a group setting and then you say something fast and a bit of slang comes out and they're like, wait, what? Well, what did you just say? And that's normally what happens. But look, no, you learn a lot and, form really good friendships with some of our players. And, in training camp, we would have been playing cards a lot together and just that's how you build those bonds and relationships and, inside jokes or whatever, and a bit of crack, yourself. And yeah, look, it was a class experience now. So yeah, it's I think we pretty much brought most of our guys back from last year on our active roster. So maybe there's a few that have left, but we've got a really good team, and it's just about staying healthy now. And with the new head coach coming in, hopefully good things can happen. And yeah, look, I'm just excited to be a part of it.
Very much. And to you and all the rest of the guys who are training in Florida, I wish you the best of luck. Punt, the Irish and the NFL, a documentary on kickers like Charlie Smyth and all the other Irish who are giving it a go in the world's biggest sports league, aired on RTE. It was available on the RTE player. Charlie Smyth, thank you very much for taking the time to join us, and I wish you well.